Good morning and welcome to the Point. Well, the primary election has come and gone, and now we know what the general election matchups will be. We saw Peter Meijer win convincingly this past Tuesday to become the Republican nominee in the 3rd Congressional District. The race this fall, he'll face Hillary Scholten in the general. And both parties are eyeing the seat as an opportunity. Similarly, the 6th District, where Democrats hope to take on incumbent Fred Upton in November, State Representative John Hoadley won that primary on Tuesday to become the Democratic nominee. Those are just two of the races that we'll be watching as we move into the general election mode. This morning, to kick off our coverage of what will prove to be a pivotal and unusual election cycle, we invited the chairs of the Michigan Democratic Party and the Michigan Republican Party to talk about this important year. As you can imagine, they differ on a lot, from how the primary was handled by the Secretary of State to how they see the races matching up. This morning, you'll hear from both of the leaders, beginning with Republican Chair Laura Cox. Let's start with an overall view of this election from your perspective as chairman of the Michigan Republican Party. What was the election like from an outcome standpoint?
I think we're really excited to have all these great candidates emerge from the primaries. We don't get involved in primaries, but now we have our team, and we're excited to wrap our arms around them and make sure that they're successful in November. So we've been working really hard just on the Republican name, but now we have actually people to put to those faces, to put to those races. So we're really excited.
This is a little off topic, but you said that you don't get involved in primaries, which is true. How difficult is it as a party chairman to see what may be a field of maybe 4 or 5 really good candidates, knowing that only one of them is going to make the grade, and that if you could, would you like to spread them around sometimes, or is this just a part of the process?
It is a part of the process, but absolutely, we have great leaders that were in a lot of really key races across the state, and we want to make sure that they stay involved. They're part of our team, and we want to make sure that everybody unites together to make sure that we have the candidates that made it through the primary. It might not be their time, but there'll be another chance for them to lead, and there'll be another role or another opportunity. So we're just really excited, but it's hard because for every one person that wins, you have a loser, and you have to call them, and it's disappointing on our side as well as theirs. And, I just want to keep them, their spirits up and keep them focused on November, making sure that we get the Republican candidate elected.
Let's talk about some specific races that I've got my eye on, and the first is a pretty obvious one, and that's the 3rd Congressional District. It is obvious because first, if it's an open seat, and open seats are always targets for both parties. And in this case, it looks like you're going to have Hillary Scholten, who is going to be what appears to be a pretty well-funded Democrat, against Peter Meijer, who appears to be a pretty well-funded Republican. What's the party's role in those kind of races, understanding that both of those candidates will also get some DC help?
We're really excited with candidate Peter Meijer. He's a great young man. He has an interesting story, how he served our country. He started out at West Point and left, and actually still served in the Army, not as a commissioned officer, which I think is a really interesting way to say. He said, I want to rush in, I want to roll up my sleeves and be a part of something. And we really like that story. He's helped in missions. He's got a great name, of course, and a great family behind him. And we're just really excited to embrace him and make sure that he is successful. But we want to pick that seat up. We know we can. We've been lacking a voice in the 3rd with Justin Amash, and we want a strong Republican voice there. And I believe the voters will deliver that.
We know that some of these congressional districts will be heavily targeted, and I believe Michigan 6 will be one of those where John Hoadley, who is the Democrat who has run and won in the most populous part of that district, will be running against longtime incumbent Congressman Fred Upton. Again, both of these races could get competitive as we move through the next 90 days. How involved can you get?
We'll be very involved. We want to make sure we protect our incumbents, and quite frankly, Congressman Upton is the dean of our delegation. He's a great, strong leader for Michigan, specifically in his district, but also a great leader for our delegation. And we're going to make sure that he wins again. In contrast, John Holy, who's been campaigning for almost 2 years, barely won this primary with a woman who's really pretty much a no name and didn't really campaign as hard. So we know that he is definitely going to be able to win again, be reelected, and we're excited to make sure that that happens.
Sticking with the theme of congressional races, are there any other in the state? Are there any places where you're concentrating, without giving away any trade secrets, and there are none in this business, but are there places that you're concentrating that you think you might have pickups?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, we want to protect all our incumbents, and we will do that and continue to do that. We have a great congressional delegation. We want to make sure we return them to their seats. We want to pick up the 3rd, like we just discussed. And of course, the 8th and the 11th are opportunities as well. We have 2 candidates that have yet to be decided. By the time we air, we will know who those candidates are. We think we have an idea, but we're going to put our arms around them and make sure that they're successful. The opponents, which are the incumbent congresswomen, are basically people that want to play politics in D.C., and people in the 8th and the 11th district are frustrated. They want a voice for them. They don't want somebody that's lockstep with AOC or lockstep with Nancy Pelosi. And so we're going to make sure that we get out there, we talk to the voters and remind them that they do deserve a voice in D.C., and we can make sure that we get them elected a voice in D.C.
So every 2 years, these congressional seats are typical battlegrounds, but it occurs to me that this year there is another battleground. We'll get to the presidency too, but there is another battleground here in the state of Michigan, and that is the state house. Now, Republicans have enjoyed control of the state house over the past number of years, and both in the House and Senate, I should say, in the legislature. But it wouldn't take very many. I think about 4 flips in the House for Democrats to be able to take control. So how many fronts do you have to be on the defensive there?
Well, I'm not going to reveal all the secret sauce, but let me tell you, we have a great lineup of candidates, and we're working really hard with them to make sure that they're successful. We're training them. We're getting them prepared. We have 80 people embedded across the state to help get Republicans elected up and down the ballot. We're building on that each and every day, and we're going to pivot to talking about specific local races in the state house seats. Those people are embedded to help train them and to train volunteers to help get them elected. So we're really excited about it. We've never had this big of an operation in Michigan, and we're going to continue to utilize that to help get these Republican candidates elected or reelected, depending on, if they're incumbents or not.
Well, one of the big issues that is out there is this race for president, and Donald Trump is on the ballot this time. He wasn't 2 years ago. We don't know exactly how that plays in Michigan or how much he's going to play in Michigan because we get some mixed signals. What is your take on how hard the Trump-Pence team is going to compete here?
Oh, they're absolutely in for a penny, in for a pound. Let me tell you something. They've been invested in Michigan, the state of Michigan, since 2016. When the president was elected, he has pushed policies and procedures to help people across Michigan, to help families, to help businesses, to better their lives. Our economy was humming before this pandemic. He did great things. Unemployment was at historic lows. People's 401ks were growing. Things were going great. And it is because of his leadership. He wanted to make sure he pushed the USMCA. The Democrats were sitting on their hands and playing politics. That policy benefits Michigan so very much. We're one of the top states that'll help in our manufacturing and agricultural sectors. He wants to defend our police. He wants to keep our communities safe. He pushed criminal justice reforms that kept families together, got people out of incarceration back into the community. That was bipartisan legislation. He has so many things that he's done to make people's lives different, and we're going to continue to talk about that to make sure he's reelected.
A couple more quick issues where we're talking about the primary, and one of the things I wanted to discuss and failed to ask you was about the process, because we know we had more absentee mail-in voting than we have ever seen before, and there were some real concerns. And this, by the way, we're talking the day after, and there are still some races that haven't been settled. But I was surprised that many of the races that we were looking at, we could call last night or sometimes very early in the morning. Tell me about that process and what that holds for the general election.
Well, I think it kicked off with something that we believe was, against the law. And we had a activist Secretary of State who mailed applications to every registered voter across the state. And we believe that she did that, and they were not requested applications, and that's what we believe is supposed to happen. So based on kind of starting this election process and we believe a wrong manner, and then you have over 3,000 clerks across the state trying to put forth a safe and secure election process. It's just problematic from the get-go. And then yesterday, at the very beginning of the day, can you imagine this? Talking to the people of the state of Michigan and saying, I know we have a job to do, but we're going to be a little late. You're just going to have to be patient with us. Like, who does that? It's just absolutely wrong. And people across the state are watching, and they're learning. They're learning that maybe they made a wrong decision in 2018 electing Jocelyn Benson, because she's just playing politics with our elections, and that's absolutely wrong.
Last question. We're about out of time. To the degree that what will the Republican National Convention look like, and will people be traveling, or is it all going to be virtual?
There's a very, very small contingent, I believe the chairwoman's been talking about it, that are going to Charlotte to do the actual business and nomination of the president. So that'll be a little under or a little over 300 people. So very small delegation going there from each and every state. And we're excited to have it happen. And then there'll be surprises each night with different speakers until I don't know when the president's speaking, because there's surprise events each night at 10 o'clock. So I think more information will come forward as we get closer to the process.
When we come back, we'll talk with the leader of the state Democratic Party. Now, as I pointed out at the top of the show, these two leaders don't agree on a lot of these races, but they both have something in common, and that is they've got a lot of people on the ground working them. We'll talk about that next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. One of the things that both of the party chairmen in the Michigan and the Republican Party have in common is that they want to win. They want to see their parties take majorities, anything from the U.S. House to the State House, and they're fighting in all 83 counties. We talked with the Democratic chairman, Lavora Barnes, about that ground game. The primary is behind you, and now you're on the way to the general election. Talk to me about your primary. We'll get to the races specifically in a minute, but talk to me about that process and how you, as the chairman of one of the two major parties in the state, kind of pull your folks back together after a primary, because sometimes they can get a little rough.
They can. The thing that we do here is our state party remains neutral in these primaries. We don't let anyone believe that we would put our thumb on the scale for any specific candidate in a Democratic primary. It's not our role. Afterwards, we all come together to support the Democratic nominee. We are so thrilled, though, by the turnout from this primary election, record-setting turnout. The number of Dems who voted in this primary is higher than we've seen, I believe, ever. And a lot of that has to do with our terrific candidates and also with our work. We've been working hard as a party to boost turnout, to talk to people about voting from home safely and voting by mail. And we did, I think, a terrific job of getting folks ready for November, when they're going to have to do that again, vote by mail and vote safely from home. And, our clerks did a terrific job of receiving this large number of absentee or vote by mail ballots and processing them probably quicker than I thought they would. I think they got through it pretty well.
We talked earlier, we were talking about the education component of it, and part of what you have to do, and not just you, the Republicans will do it too, is reaching out to those people who have never voted absentee. It's always been a mindset that you're going to go down to your local precinct and you're going to vote, and some people still did that, but because more people will be voting absentee, because we do have new election laws, and because we are in the middle of a pandemic, what do you do to help people who may not have ever tried to get an absentee ballot or fill one out before?
Yeah, our team and our volunteers spent a lot of time on the phone talking to voters, walking them through this process, folks who had never voted by mail or voted from home before, how to get that absentee ballot application, get it filled out, return it to their clerk, what the ballot would look like when it arrived in your mail, how to get it into that envelope and making sure you're signing it and returning it. And at one point, of course, because of the calendar, we wanted folks to take them directly to the clerk's office or to those ballot drop boxes and not try to return them by mail. So we were actively walking through that process with our voters and feel really good about the successes we had in helping folks learn how to use this tool. So we're ready to do it again in November.
I want to talk about that November election and how you're going to approach that, because campaigning is different. But let's pick out a couple of races to talk about first. In the 3rd Congressional District, that is a seat that was held by Justin Amash. He was a Republican for most of the time he was there, and it's been a Republican seat since the 70s. And so the idea that Democrats did not have a primary, and in the candidate of Hillary Scholten have got somebody who's proven she can raise money. Peter Meyer, the candidate for the Republicans, also had a good fundraising cycle. So it looks like you've got 2 candidates that are ready to go in what I think could be an interesting race. What's your take on Michigan 3?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Michigan 3. I think this is a race a lot of folks probably last year this time wouldn't have thought would have been on the Democrats' radar, but it's absolutely on our radar. Our candidate there, Hillary Scholten, is amazing. We're so pleased that she's running. She's doing a terrific job. She's put together a great team. She's raising the money. She's having the conversations with voters. I think she can draw a strong contrast between her Republican opponent, and we'll get a lot of great support. We feel really good about our ability to pick up that seat in the 3rd.
Well, and I know you pay attention to all of the congressional seats. Not all of them are necessarily targeted in the same fashion, because it's a matter of putting your money where and your resources where it might best be used. But I know that Democrats have been eyeing the 6th district for a while too, and now you've got State Representative John Hoadley, 3 times elected in Kalamazoo County, which is a big part of that district, running against incumbent Fred Upton. That too could be an interesting race.
Absolutely. And that seat where John Hoadley's going to take on that incumbent is another seat, just like the 3rd, that's getting national attention. We're very excited about John Hoadley's candidacy. We think he draws a strong, sharp contrast between himself and the incumbent. I think the folks of that district are ready for a representative who represents their interests and does not go into Washington to be in the pocket of this current president or in the pocket of special interests. I think Hoadley is going to run a terrific campaign and win that seat for the Democrats.
When you look at these 2 in West Michigan, I mean, it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like that you as a party may be putting more emphasis on those 2 federal seats in the West Side than we've seen for a long time.
No, you're absolutely right. We've seen some terrific movement on the west side of the state. Our local parties there have grown and have gotten stronger and stronger through the past couple of cycles. We feel really good about our prospects on the west side. And, we're running an 83 county strategy here. We're running everywhere to win up and down the ticket. So you'll see more of us in parts of the state than perhaps you've seen in previous cycles, because we believe there's potential for us up and down the ticket all over the state.
When you talk about 83 counties, you got 110 House seats, and I know from talking with a number of people who are out there preparing for some of those House races, that it's an emphasis to try to flip 4, right? Is that what you need to flip to get to a majority in the House?
That's exactly right. We need 4 to get Governor Whitmer at least 1 chamber that she can work with that will help her keep her promises that she made to the people of Michigan. She's been blocked at every turn by this legislature, and we're determined this time to get her a state House that she can work with.
Well, even if that happened, obviously there are no Senate races this year, so you still have a Republican-controlled Senate. But tell me, are there, if to the degree you can or want to, are there districts in West Michigan that you're eyeing?
There are districts obviously all over the state that we're eyeing. We're very excited about our candidates. We've got some terrific folks running up and down the ticket. I think that you'll find as we get closer to Election Day, there will be a lot of candidates who will get some terrific attention from the party and from our groups of friends and who want to help us support candidates all over the state. I don't want to name them. I want you to find out who they are as they get closer to Election Day.
When we talk,
it's going to be good. It's going to be good. We're very excited about the work we're going to do.
Now I have a cliffhanger. Let's talk a little bit about campaigning. It's a different animal. I described earlier this week on television running for the state house like a full contact sport. You get out, you knock doors, you shake hands, you talk to people, go to coffee shops. But that's not the way you're doing it this year. And I know the last time we talked, you said you talked a lot about adapting to what is campaigning normal today. But obviously for those candidates who traditionally would go out and make personal contacts, it's got to be done differently.
Yeah, it's all very different now. We're all doing this campaigning like you and I are talking right now, virtually, safely in our homes. It's a very different agenda. And I have to say, there have been some candidates who've gotten out and have done some lit drops. You know, they wear their masks, some of them wear their gloves, and they leave the lit behind on the doors. And where there are voters who want to come out and have a conversation, they will have that conversation. But our campaigns here at the party, our staff here at the party, are all working virtually. They're all on the phones, or they're text messaging, or they're having virtual town hall meetings and virtual one-on-one meetings with volunteers and voters. And it's working. We're enjoying the contact. The contact rates are up, and we're very pleased with the progress.
Let's talk about the race for president. Obviously, that too will change, and we're going to talk about the convention after a while. But when you think about the way the presidential campaign will be run in the state of Michigan, on one hand, those signature big rallies that Donald Trump had in 2016 and continued up until the pandemic are not likely to come back in that kind of form. Similarly, your presumptive candidate, former Vice President Biden, is not able to get out and make that in-person contact. And I know at a presidential level, it's not about knocking doors, clearly, but there is something about having a presence within the state that helps focus attention of the voters that you hope to wish on them. How does it change that dynamic before we discuss the race itself?
Yeah, I think Vice President Biden and his team have been doing this smartly. They understand the dangers of bringing large numbers of folks together for those rallies that we all love so much. And so he's been doing a lot of virtual work. You know, we do virtual events here in Michigan where we bring Michiganders onto the call or onto the video conference to talk to the vice president or to Dr. Jill Biden or to other surrogates. He's done some, local media interviews. I think he's made himself probably more available for local media here in Michigan than he perhaps would have under other circumstances when he could get physically here. I think he's doing all the right things given the state of the world right now to make sure that he's getting into people's homes and getting into people's mailboxes and into their television sets. He's doing it right. And I think that folks in Michigan understand, given the pandemic, that we've got to do this differently. We can't expect these big rallies that we are accustomed to. It's not safe. It's not smart. And so we'll continue to campaign virtually until it is safe to do otherwise.
What does he need to do to close the deal in Michigan? For the first time in decades, Republicans, by a narrow margin, were able to claim the state in the presidential sweepstakes 4 years ago. What does your candidate need to do to win Michigan back?
I think we continue having the conversations he's been having about the issues that are important to Michiganders. He talks a lot about healthcare. He talks a lot about how he would have responded to COVID if he had been president when this happens. He talks a lot about the economy, and he's talking about issues like Black Lives Matter, talking about the issues that matter to the folks here in Michigan, and he needs to continue to do that. And once he and his vice presidential choice, whoever she is, start to do more and more of those conversations, more and more people will get to hear the exciting plans he's got for our country moving forward.
I was reminded a couple of weeks ago that by my social media memories that came up, that there were a bunch of us that were all crowded up in Cleveland and then crowded up in Philadelphia, rubbing elbow to elbow in convention centers you couldn't hardly get through. You had to move people out of the way. Your convention is coming up. It's not going to be like that when everything starts happening in Milwaukee.
It is not. We're all going to be virtual, doing just what we've been doing all along on the campaign side, doing this work virtually. It's going to be fascinating. I know the convention team has got some exciting surprises in store for the delegates that I don't know anything about. We're working right now on how our delegation meetings will go, and we're inviting speakers to come in and join us in our virtual meeting to talk to our delegation. We're putting together a gift bag for our delegates that they would have gotten in person if they'd been there. And we're going to make sure that they get that. We're trying our best to make it a good experience for our delegates. Some folks have waited a long time to get to be a delegate to a national convention, and this may be the only time they get to do that. So we're working very hard to make it the best experience we can for them.
So now the parties know what their matchups will be in November, and from now until then, they'll be fighting for every vote they can find. We'll have a final thought next. To the point. That's all the time we have for this week. I'll see you next Sunday morning at 10 o'clock on Wood TV 8 for To the Point.